Check 1 2, check 1 2. Good afternoon, Tony.
Are you there, Jay?
I'm here. How you doing?
Good, man. Good.
Hey, man, let me first apologize again for the mix-up on the
Oh, no
scheduling side of
worries.
it.
No worries.
Yeah. So how you doing? World life treating you well?
Life's treating me well. I'm just a little apprehensive about where things are going, man.
I hear
Everything's
you.
getting crazy, right?
I hear you. Totally hear you on that on so many levels.
Yeah. Just there's a side of me. To be honest with you, I haven't said this to a lot of people, but when I was 25 working with these old guys that were in their 60s, and I just respected those guys so much because they really didn't care what people thought about what they said. And I'm like, I want to be like that one day. I want to
Yeah.
be like old enough, wise enough, and to not give a rip when I speak, truth or what's on my mind. And man, I think those days are upon us, right? You gotta speak up and kind of say what you think right now.
Couldn't agree with you more. And if it's okay with you, I definitely would like to get your take on that, because one of the aspects of our show is about empowering dreams, igniting passion, and accelerating prosperity mentally, physically, financially, spiritually. And so this is a topic that comes up frequently. Where are we going? What's happening? Like, protecting my in my financial future? Do the rules apply now as they did before, and those kinds of things? So if you're okay with that, I wouldn't mind going down that road.
Yeah, I'm glad to do it. I'm just going to let you know that I feel like I'm going to guess you're a faith-based. Yes.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
sir.
yeah. So
Yeah.
just making sure. I think God's connected me to a lot of faith-based people right now. I don't know, I used to work for Dave Ramsey. I don't know if you saw that on my bio when it came through. And I loved working for Dave. Dave's serving the niche that God's called him to serve and doing a fantastic job of it for 30 years, man. He's been grinding it out. And I think getting people as ready as they can be for what's going on right now. But I'm a little bit further down the rabbit hole than Dave is. And so as long as you're okay going into the zone that a lot of people are just not awake for right now, I'm fine going there with you, man. It's just you just got to not think I'm crazy after I start opening my mouth, because it's getting crazy, man. When 16-year-old girls get arrested in Wyoming for not wearing a mask to school.
I know.
When teachers up in New Jersey are starting to report on the COVID conversations or the vaccine conversations they're having with children and with parents into a database, those are not good things.
I'm more than happy. And I've probably had, at least a half a dozen, if not 8. In fact, the episode that came out today was the 5 assumptions on COVID, evidence-based or fiction. And so you can kind of get a feel for, where I stand on this. So wherever we go, I'm good with it.
Yeah. Fiction. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen it. There's something like 10,000 doctors right now that have starting to band together, but filing for like crimes against humanity type stuff against certain people. And that's starting to make its waves. Of course, they're trying to step up censorship with Facebook. And even I just saw an article that said Hillary Clinton's calling for more censorship on social media, and small wonder, right?
Well, the question begs to be asked: when has censorship ever been a good thing? And I think every logical thinking person, whether they agree or disagree with my point, your point, understands that the free and open dialogue is an important part of our society and needs to be preserved.
Yeah, I love it. Well, let's just see where this thing goes, right?
Absolutely. So I already recorded the opening. So I'll just get started and bring you in, and we'll go from there. I'll basically start with, hey, tell me your background as it relates to your story, which is kind of cool. Are you still in Nashville?
Yeah, we're in Franklin, which is just about 20 minutes south of Nashville. And then we're moving, just bought a house in Columbia, which is about 45 minutes south of here, with 10 acres of land. And so I'm down there every night right now doing fixer-upper tasks to get ready to move into it. Hopefully we'll be moving in here in the next 30 or 45 days.
Nice. My son just moved down to Nashville. He's living in the Gulch area. We were down there in the spring. Love the city, love the area. I've got a good buddy, a chiropractic friend of mine, Dr. Don Johnson, who's in that area too. So yeah, I've got an affinity for your state.
Well, maybe you'll be here for it soon, because it's going to be one of the freest places left in the States before too long, I'm sure.
I'm afraid you're right.
Where are you located, by the way?
I'm in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, which is about an hour and a half outside of Minneapolis, east of Minneapolis on the west.
You get rid of the voter fraud up there, and y'all may keep things together for a little bit longer.
Yeah, we're working on it. All right, man. So we'll get started. Like I said, I'll just bring you in, and we'll have some fun.
Awesome.
Okay, here we go. 3, 2. Hey, Triple P Nation, welcome back. As I mentioned, my guest this week is Tony Bradshaw. Tony is the author of The Millionaires Choice, and it's got a really fascinating story. We were just talking off air, and I think our conversation is going to be fascinating. So sit back, tighten your seatbelt, and get ready to be inspired, motivated, and perhaps awakened. Tony, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to this conversation, Jay.
Same here. So I always like to start off and find out about you. I want my audience to learn about you and kind of what got you to the point you're at right now as far as the choices you've made in your life. I know you had mentioned that at 25, you had some habits that weren't really empowering as it relates to your finances, and you made some changes in life, and now you're sharing that, you're teaching others, which is really exciting, and that's why I wanted John. So why don't we start there?
Yeah, great. So yeah, I grew up like a lot of us, as you get into this money thing, start teaching people about it, you realize that many of us just came from low income families. I've done about 70 episodes on my podcast now, and the stories are very similar to mine. Single people growing up in single mom households. Both of my parents did stay together while I was married, or while I was growing up. And that alone creates a level of stability in your life just by both your parents staying together. But I've interviewed a lot of people who didn't have that luxury and grew up in single parent homes with 3 or 4 kids. Both of my parents, by the way, did grow up in single parent homes. Very, very challenging. My dad dropped out of school. My mom always told me he dropped out in the 9th grade, but my wife and I found a yearbook online the other day that had him as a sophomore. So that's 10th grade. So yeah. He had life challenges from that, but he had to support himself, and he didn't get family support growing up. He had to support himself. Started smoking when he was 9 years old. He quit smoking a couple of years ago. And then my mom, kind of similar, had 5 siblings, single parent home. And so they didn't learn how to manage money growing up. And, I grew up with the power getting cut off, the water getting cut off, my dad sending me out to the water meter with what's called a water key, which is a tool you can buy at Home Depot. And you just pop the lid off the water meter, stick the key down there, turn the water back on so your mom can take a shower inside because she's had a long day at work, and that was our life. And that works pretty good until it gets padlocked. And then, after you do that enough, they come out and padlock it because they do want you to pay the bills. And it was just kind of that story. That's what I kind of kept seeing over and over and over. And then started repeating those same patterns, I guess. Fortunately, I didn't get too far into credit card debt in my 20s. My first credit card, I think, had a $500 limit on it. I think it was a Chase Manhattan Bank. So when I got out of college, I was fortunate not to have any student loan debt in college. My parents did help me quite a bit, and I had scholarships, and I worked to keep that down and out of my life. But when I got out, I kind of waited for the jobs to roll in. You hear that, right? The college kids, they think the world is an oyster, but it's not unless you take advantage of it. You have to go find the oyster and take the pearl out. And so I racked up some debt, and then went and got a job. My dad said, "Hey, you need to go get a job." He had a very, very strong work ethic. And so I started working again after college, and then landed an engineering job. And before I knew it, I was looking at a W-2, my first W-2 as an engineer. And I'm like, man, I made $39,000. Where did that money go? Like, I've got like $500 in the bank. I'm living with my parents. I'm in a studio bedroom apartment. I've got a TV that I invested in, a stereo I invested in, speakers, which I still use today. They obviously were a good investment, because that's 25 years old. And I had these things, but I didn't have it. It just didn't line up mentally for me. And here I was, made $39,000, and I had about $16,000 in debt, about $13,000 on the card, about $3,000 on credit cards and different things. And I'm like, man, what I did last year, I can never do again in my lifetime. Like, I have to change from that to something new. And the only thing I knew how to do was to go read. I learned everything from reading. My mom was a convenience store worker, so I used to get off the school bus and go wait for her to get off from her job. And sometimes I would have to sit there for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours at a time. And she had a magazine rack. So if I wanted to learn something, that's where I learned to work on cars. I read every car magazine that came through there for years, and rebuilt my first car engine at age 14, 15 years old. My dad and I got in a fight about building the engine because I was following the instructions of what I knew, and he just kind of threw his hands up and walked off, and I had to finish it on my own. And then learned how to fish, learned how to bass fish from magazines, and then taught the neighborhood kids all the principles of fishing, and organized fishing tournaments as a kid, like 10, 12-year-old kid. And so when it came to money, I'm like, you know what? I got to learn. I need to go read. And so I started reading Money Magazine, Smart Money Magazine, Kiplinger's Fun Magazine. Today people would look online for the internet and the resources that are there. There's a lot more at your fingertips. But that was my journey. And I realized something, that money is really not that difficult. It's really just a math problem. And it's pretty simple math. It's not even advanced math. As an engineer, I took calculus and had to learn all these things about derivatives and all this crazy stuff. And it was challenging. But as a money problem, it's like, oh, this is just simple multiplication, division, and you just find ways to multiply your money. And as I say today, you have to learn how to make, manage, and multiply your money. And those are the principles that I'm trying to teach other people. But that allowed me very quickly to go, hey, I'm broke. I don't want to be broke. I think I can be a millionaire by age 40. And I thought that was pretty special until I started doing this podcast and I started meeting all these guys and girls that have done it by age 25 or 30. And I'm like, man, I'm not that special. This is a pretty easy thing to do. And I wouldn't say easy. That makes it sound like, it's just ridiculously simple. It's not. You have to make some tough choices and make some plans, but it is doable. That's the beauty of it. It's a repeatable process, right? And so many people have done it again and again that it should give people hope that they can do it too.
I would agree. And thanks for the kind of setting up this conversation today. I think it's important for people, again, to understand, all right, who's the guy who's speaking to him? Who really is Tony and your authority? Because the experiences you have, what you've lived, what you've taught, has kind of led up to this point. And I remember a great mentor of mine once said, he said, Jay, the best way to protect your wealth is stay married.
Fastest way to lose it. Fastest way to lose half of everything you own.
That's right. That's right.
So screw up your marriage. And
So
I almost did that, by the way. I almost did it.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'm glad it worked out. So let me start by this question, because you kind of alluded to it when you were speaking. Do you believe poverty is a mindset?
I would say I'm going to probably answer that in a slightly different way. I would say people who maintain a poverty mindset are going to stay in poverty.
Yeah.
And people who shift their mindset. For me, the way I say it is it went from a broke mindset to a future millionaire mindset. And I do believe that's the first thing that has to shift, right? When I wrote my book and I went back and looked at all of the steps that I went through, the first one was a wake up. I had what I call a financial awakening. And I'm like, I don't want to be that way. I want to be a different way. And that's what I find for most of the people who build wealth that grew up in the same place. Some people a lot more in deeper poverty than I was, or broke mindset. They were able to shift that. And, I've got a wonderful mentor, and his name's JV Crum. And he was 5 years old when his mom told him to stop asking for candy bars at the grocery store because she didn't want people to think they didn't have money. And he goes, what's wrong with this? Why can't I get a candy bar? And he went home and thought about that problem and said, you know what? I know how to fix this. When I grow up, I'm going to be rich. And he made that decision at age 5, and he was a millionaire at age 25. And so his mindset shifted over a candy bar. And there's more and more crazy stories of people that I've had interviewed. But yeah, it starts with a mindset. I think the second thing is a vision, right? You and I both know Dave Ramsey. He's an amazing guy. He is helping people make the first basic step, which is to get rid of a broke mindset or a debt mindset. And so he is giving them a debt-free vision. Like that is what he's holding out before them and said, you can be debt-free. And because people don't have a financial vision, they're kind of stuck. And so they latch onto his financial vision, whether that's for, a short time or a long time, but it allows them to take those first easy steps to go, hey, I need to change and I need to make a difference. And so they're latching on to Dave's vision, and he's helping them shift their mindset.
And so many people, this poverty or scarcity mindset is learned early in life. Like you said, you were talking about your friend, yourself. Probably, I know certainly for myself as well too. I was told things that made me believe, and it ingrained into my subconscious mind is that hey, we were poor. The world is finite. People who are wealthy have achieved their wealth through some nefarious means. And so, overcoming that's very, very difficult. So are there tools or tactics that you speak to people about to help them shift their mindset?
Wow, that's a good question. I think, I'm still working on that problem, because the reality is, if you look at the numbers, over 70% of people are still living paycheck to paycheck in the United States. And regardless of whether you agree with it or not, the United States is like the most wealthy country, well-off country for everybody, not just people at the top, but for everyone, right? So, we have most everybody in the United States has food and water. There are some that still don't, that still, face challenges. But when you look at the world as a whole, you got people in much, much worse situations. Almost in every country of every world are in worse shape than even our poorest people in the United States. So when you get to the mindset of what you're saying, and people being able to break free from that, the poverty side of it, it's, some people become aware of it. 70% of people living paycheck to paycheck in the US. It's a number, but 30, 40, 50 years ago, it's still the same numbers, right? It's the same numbers for generations. So how do we change that? And that's the problem I'm really looking at, is like, we can keep doing the same things. Dr. J, you can keep doing it. I can keep doing it. We're two white guys. We're better off than a lot of Americans. And we can keep doing the model the same way, but something's got to shift if we want everybody to come along on the journey with us. And that's what I'm trying to do, is go, how do you break the entire system, break the entire mold, instead of just doing the same podcast stuff, the same book stuff, the same speaking stuff, which all the other guys before me have done. And what I'm trying to do is go, how do you wake up an entire city? There's a wonderful book called Switch, which I've read some number of years ago. And it talks about how do you create change when change is hard. And you don't start with a large system. You don't start with a big problem to try to change it on a big scale, because it's too hard. You need to boil the change down to something that's smaller, that's achievable, and then let that act like a campfire, where you start a fire and then the fire can kind of spread and the mission can spread. And I think that's what you have to do when you're changing people's mindsets, is like, how can we change a massive numbers of people's mindsets on a grander scale, to help them break free? Because it is a very difficult thing. My sister is still not wealth-minded, even though she's 5 years my junior. And that's a struggle for me. Like, how did I become a millionaire, but yet my mom and my dad and my sister didn't come along on that journey with me? And I'm still trying to solve, the question that you asked, is I'm trying to figure out how to solve that. I think that's a problem that's yet to be solved in the personal finance space. But I'm going to do my best to try to figure it out.
I've had some guests on, some financial experts, and they, one of the causes, or the core essence of why this may be the case, they believe lies in the school systems, is that the schools don't teach about wealth. They don't teach about wealth creation, wealth management, as you talk about. And so the schools do really a great job of teaching kids how to be great employees, but not to think abundantly. And I think you would agree with me that God wants us to be abundant. And so it's again, it's ingrained into their subconscious mind, and that's the belief system that they have. So you talked about, starting small, create those embers, create the fire. What's a good way to start that? And if someone wanted to do that in their own network or community?
Yeah, well, you just gave me so much fuel for the fire right there. Like, you're opening some doors, some Pandora's boxes there, which I think we need to explain or expand on, which is this. The school system, there's a couple reasons the school system doesn't teach personal finance. One, you don't have financial experts in the schools. And I learned this, in the corporate world, right? So I worked for with some really, really smart people, but it's very hard to get people to appreciate or accept or adopt a skill set or a mindset that somebody else has. So I could be right in what I'm saying or teaching or trying to propose to another business person, but if they don't understand the lingo or they can't latch on to the skill set that I have. So for example, I'm a very strategic, visionary type person, but if you're working with people that are more operationally minded, it's like talking to a brick wall when you're trying to present strategy and vision. It just doesn't work. Or a technology. I'm a technology guy. Same thing, trying to get a technology concept across to somebody who's not a technology person. And I think you see the same thing in the schools. You don't have wealthy teachers walking around. So the concept of their children being able to become millionaires is foreign to them. I spoke to a school who was teaching some very well-known financial curriculum, and it's more of a scarcity-based financial curriculum. And when I showed them what I have put together, which is in a rough draft format, it's in a development process. They're like, well, it's too well-focused. We need to be more budget focused. Like, we don't need the kids thinking about wealth because it puts their mind. And it was a faith-based school. And I'm going, oh my gosh, this scares me to death, because you have the people who are teaching the children a scarcity mindset instead of an abundance mindset. And being honest, you and I are both faith-based, but here's the deal. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the founding fathers of the faith, were all wealthy men. Read the Bible. Tons of servants, tons of sheep, tons of camels. They had everything. Like by anybody's standard, you go, those dudes were filthy rich. You go back into Moses, for example, and he took the children of Israel out of Egypt. What does it say they walked out of Egypt with? The Egyptians' gold. The Egyptians gave them gold as they were leaving captivity and coming out. Why not give them something else? They gave them their wealth. And the Bible is filled with those kinds of situations. So when you go to the school system, I'm going to be very candid here. There's a lot of reasons why it's not working in the school system, but I'm going to go to the very top of that, and because people need to wake up to this. And that is, Jay, they don't want us to know how to manage money and build wealth, because when you have a nation of wealthy people, that is a nation of free people.
Right.
I love Dave Ramsey. He teaches a debt-free mindset. I've started to adopt this concept of what if you had a debt-free mindset, a job-free mindset, and a tax-free mindset? Does it all fit together? Can you run things in such a way where and when our country was founded, it was tax-free. It was a tax-free country. All the taxes, all the revenues for the government were built from, tariffs. From tariffs that were imposed on other countries. You wanted to do business in the United States, you're paying taxes. Everybody in the country was tax-free, but not the people who were trying to do business and make money off of us. And that shifted over the years, and that's not a good thing. But I'm going to point the finger at the central bankers. The same central bankers control everything, and they influence politics. And when you're in debt and when you're in the financial system, then you're making them rich. And the more people that are in debt, the more money they make. And so when you look at people that control policy, that's a big point and a big play in it. So I'm a big believer in that, but I don't know how to change it yet.
Well, I tell you what, I think the way you explain it is brilliant and true. I really do. I think, just like when politicians sow division, they do so to separate people and to distract us from what they're doing. So we fight amongst ourselves, whether it's race or politics or religion or racism or whatever it might be. They're always putting that topic or subject out there to keep us distracted. And it's no different with finances. That makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah. And I used a term on a show that I was talking about the other day, and that some people got offended by it. But we are, and so let's see if it offends you the same way it offended someone else. And that is this: the system is designed to create slaves out of all of us. It's just the bottom line. And some people did not like me using the word slave, so you could say servant or indentured servant or whatever. But the deeper you go into the system and the more you understand the system, and I'm sad to say that I have really just begun this understanding in the last probably 5 years, just because of the material I'm reading. If I don't know if you've read The Creature from Jekyll Island, Jay, but it's a fantastic book. Yes. I think anybody I coach, I want them to read that book, because then they can start to understand how this system was created. And for example, this is going to sound crazy, but I'm a big believer now that the Great Depression was an engineered event. We think of it as it just happened and it was such a shame, but the system back then was putting power into the people's hands, because you had decentralized banking coming up all across the country, and that took away power from the central bankers. So then you come along with the Great Depression, and then they say they made the case for a central bank. And so they put a central bank in place. They put Social Security in place where everybody got a number. We became numbered in those days. And then you had the IRS was put into place. So all of these things were put into place at that time. And I could go way down that rabbit hole with you if we want to. But now here we are 100 years later. And what's happening right now? You're looking at another economic implosion that's about to happen worldwide. You've got Evergrande over in China. You've got, I think the latest I've seen is 2 other real estate companies in China that may go belly up as well. You've got a lot of American investment companies like BlackRock and Vanguard that are deep in to these Chinese real estate companies. And you have the World Economic Forum with Klaus Schwab, the international bankers, are trying to bring in a great reset where they say, hey, we want everybody on a universal basic income. So they want to be issuing you cash. And they're telling you weird things like, you're not going to own anything and you're going to love it. Like that's the lingo that they're using and pushing out to try to influence people away from freedom. And that's what they're given. And so you look at it was engineered. I believe the Great Depression was engineered 100 years ago, and we're looking at the same thing today, 100 years later. And we're in the middle of it, man. And so when you say the world's crazy, we talk about that right now. It's like the world's crazy. What's going on? You're looking at a pivotal moment in human history right now.
I agree. And so many of us look at it and what's happening. We go, well, this is just pure incompetence. I mean, what's going on is, like you said, it's crazy. It just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't add up. It's just pure incompetency. And I argue, no, it's not. This is exactly planned. This is, they know exactly what they're doing, and they know ultimately what the outcome is going to be as well, too. Which is in some regards even more scary looking ahead forward. But before we get into that, you talk about it, your mission is to inspire, teach, and help people become millionaires with generous hearts, so benevolence, so they can enjoy their life and help others, which is incredible. And so when you work with people to get them on the track to become a millionaire, what are some of the things that you look at and help them begin to understand?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, obviously we talked about mindset, right? So the first thing it has to start shifting is your mindset. Either you're going to be, I was wealth minded. So I went broke sucks. I want to build some wealth. And then by age 40, I want to be living off my investments. I didn't live off my investment at age 40, but I've been living off of them the last 4 years. So I've kind of, 6 years later, but that's okay. Plans are made to change. And so your mindset shifts first. That's the first thing that shifts. Then your behavior has to follow that. Like your vision has to come in, and then your behavior. And I'm not a big proponent of penny pinching on the budget and things like that. But what I am a proponent of is getting your money redirected to flowing into the right things, making your priorities shift. And so when I was broke, my priorities was buying things and eating cheeseburgers and Taco Bell every day for lunch. That's where all my money was going. When I shifted, I made a very simple formula, and it was this. Oh, I have enough money. Let me break it down. I'm going to put 1/3 to living expenses, 1/3 to paying off my debt, because I'm a debt-free guy. And then I want 1/3 going on to investments. It's a very simple formula. Of course, I did not mention for faith-based people tithing, but that's in there. Okay. That's part of living expenses under that model. That was as simple as it had to be. And so that allowed me, after taxes, I think I was making about probably a little over $3,000 a month or something right around that take home pay. So 1,000 into living expenses, 1,000 into to debt, and 1,000 into investments, roughly ballpark numbers. Those are all ballpark numbers. It was 25 years ago. And so that was the first mindset. So when I look at a budget, I really just break it up into 4 categories: living expenses, or living money, wealth money, play money, and others money. Okay. So others money is giving things away to people, whether that's tithing or gifts, anniversary gifts, birthday gifts, whatever those things are, where you're, could be orphans, could be, donations to different groups, homeless shelters or something like that. So that's others money, money you set aside for other people. Living money is obviously, your car, your house, your expenses for living. And a lot of times what people do when they don't pay attention to their money is their living expenses are way out of control and their play money is way out of control. And then they've got like zero or very little into wealth money, and probably not that much going into others money. And so that's usually what I see, is that the budget is just kind of out of whack. And I do it in a simple format because I want people to go, oh, all I really need to do is redirect some of my cash that's going out the door over here in these other areas that doesn't benefit me long-term, and turn it into some long-term beneficiary money. And that's when and then on top of that, you build up your wealth strategies, right? So the typical financial advisor, you hear this taught all the time, put 15% in retirement. And I never really even looked at that. I think that's a stupid number. I like to deal in absolutes. So because absolutes produce absolutely, right? So a percentage, 15% of a person who makes $50,000 a year, it's just not going to amount to much, right? But if you said, I need to get to a benchmark of $10,000 a month in retirement, or $10,000 a year, And then let's index that up. So how can I increase that? I'm playing with absolutes at that point that are much more predictable. And that's kind of where I've gone with my journey to some point where, in my life, I was able to put 60, 70% of my income back into wealth money or retirement money. Okay. And that's because the other principles have to line up, right? Instead of spending my raise every year, I invest my raise. And when you shift your mindset and your approach to cash flow or wealth building, then it kind of follows. And so I'm a big believer. If you think about a stream, Jay, and you go, hey, where's the water flowing? You want to get your cash flowing like a stream. Like, where is it flowing to? And if it's flowing into the right things, you're going to build wealth. If it's flowing into the wrong things, Starbucks lattes every day, or maybe a couple of Starbucks a day, that kind of stuff adds up and it doesn't build wealth. I made some poor purchasing decisions after I got married. So I don't know how much of the story I should tell, but yeah, I was on a debt-free track and was doing pretty well. And then I met my lovely wife, and that wasn't in my equation or my formula. And she brought me 20 grand in debt. And then I thought she needed a new vacuum for our new house that we bought. And so I went into debt for a Kirby vacuum cleaner. My parents grew up with one. I had one growing up. I'm like, that's a good investment. My parents had it for 30 years. Spent $1,500 on that thing. Thought my wife needed a meat freezer to keep all the, food in, and dropped $1,500. And I financed both of those things, by the way. So I was a debt-free minded guy, but still bought stupid stuff on debt. Now I've learned my lesson now, but those are kind of the things where you go, hey, I wish I had that $1,500 in a mutual fund or something for the last 20 years. That'd be pretty good. I've been married 23 years this year. So
Congratulations. So when you said the 4 categories, because you originally had said, you break it up into thirds. So how does the 4 categories differ, and how do you allocate percentage wise, or is that based on your strategy of how quickly you want to become, I call it financially independent, where, where your passive income exceeds your living expenses, and, you can choose to trade time for money or not. That's entirely up to you. So how do you allocate in those 4 categories?
yeah, I think it comes down. The reason I do the 4 categories, and then you have to look into the investment strategies a little bit more, is because everybody's paycheck's different. So there's not a cookie cutter approach that works. So somebody that has a $30,000 a year household income is going to obviously have different breakdowns than somebody with $100,000 or $150,000. So at the time I came down to the 1/3, I was only paying $200 a month rent and food to my parents. That's like a ridiculously good deal, right? And the wisdom in that for any 20 somethings is, listen, stay at home as long as you can and ride the train, right? Just put the money back, save it, put it away. But you have to look at the principles. And so you really have to go, okay, what are my goals? What are my investment tools that are going to get me to where I want to be, right? So if you're a millionaire at age 40, like I was, then you should be, net worth should be close to $2 million by the time you're 46 or 47.
Right.
Okay. So if you use a rule of 72, doubles about every 7 years or so, depending on where you are in the country and what's going on in the economy. So if you do that and you go by 40, then by 47, your net worth will be 2 million. By 54, it's going to be 4 million. By 61 or so, it could be possibly $8 million. Now everything is kind of different and topsy-turvy right now. So we're not dealing in absolutes right now. We're dealing in theories, but the breakdown becomes this: is you're going, hey, I need to hit specific investment goals. If you're working with 15%, which is what many financial planners are telling you, they're not giving you the whole picture. All right. And that's why I don't like necessarily, I love financial advisors. I love financial planners, but I really like money mentors more. Because a money mentor is more well diversified. Like I'm into cryptocurrencies, I'm into real estate, I'm into gold and silver, I'm into stocks and VC stuff. So when you look at that, who you're listening to is going to give you a broader stroke on your investment strategies. So when you go, okay, I'm setting up a budget, I think you've got to work with your knowns first, which is your living money, your play money, your wealth money, and your others money. Get that kind of locked down, but go, hey, I'm a little bit short here. You have to be willing to go, I'm not making enough money to get certain goals met, like to be a millionaire by this certain age or to build wealth, and you have to do that. Or if you got 6 kids like me, just get your kids through freaking college, right? So it gets expensive. And then if you don't have enough money, you need to find a way to go find more money. And so for me, I'm a big believer in investing in yourself. Turn off the television, turn off social media, and make sure you're reading books on a regular basis. Make sure you're listening to good content like the Triple Life podcast, and look at these things and building yourself. And that's what I probably did. If I have to look at what I did well, of everything I did, I would say that was the thing I did the best, is I constantly invested in myself. And part of that was because of the environment I was in. But, when I was young, probably 28, I got into the internet. I told my wife, newly married, I need to spend $1,000 on this software. That was quite a lot of money for us. I was making about $45,000 a year in a house with my wife at home, had a baby coming. And I'm like, I need to invest in this and learn this. I think it's something I need to do. So I taught myself how to program. That allowed me to get another job where I was doing database programming and internet programming for, Dave Ramsey's organization. And I was able to come in there, and then I worked on my leadership. Once I got there, I worked on leadership growth, started reading all the leadership books that Dave was throwing at us. And then a year later, I found myself in a leadership role. And, that's the principle of, when opportunity knocks, you better be ready.
Sure.
Right. It's too late to get ready when the opportunity knocks. You need to be doing the preparation before. So when the opportunity knocks, you can take advantage of it.
I agree. And also when you're investing in yourself and your education and your knowledge, those opportunities tend to fly to you faster. You're basically telling God, you're telling the universe, hey, I'm ready to serve. And they show up. So you're prime, I call it priming the pump, right?
Absolutely, man. It's the best investment you can make. I got a good friend, Jeremy. Yeah. Jeremy Newsom. He said he invests, I don't even remember how much money he invests, but he said it was a huge chunk of his annual budget that just goes into investing in himself and his personal growth. And when he gave me the number, I don't remember if it's 10, 15, 20% of what he spends. I'm like, wow, that's like a lot. Like I had never thought of it that way. I just I'm doing enough. But compared to him, I'm not doing anything compared to him.
You know what's funny is I just did this recently. I was prepping to speak to some young chiropractic students, and I was going to bring up the importance of mentorship and learning. And I said to them, the real education begins is once you get your degree. The school just preps you to take a test and pass a test, but the real learning occurs afterwards, and that's where you've got to invest outside yourself. Whether you go to seminars and again, read books, go to listen to podcasts, hire a mentor or a coach, whatever it may be. So I was just sitting there and calculating over the last roughly 30 years how much I've spent, and I almost fell over when I can't. It was over $500,000 that I've spent. And that's probably conservative because I don't have all the expenses associated with the travel and whatever, right? All that stuff associated with it. So I'm with you on that. Now, a question I have for you is, I got to imagine when you work with people and when you think of today's society is very materialistic. It's very look at me. And so I got to have the newest, latest, whatever. And I'm willing to do whatever it is. It's interesting. You go to went to an auto dealership a few months ago, and we were purchasing a car. And the first thing he says to me goes, Jay, where you want to be with your payment? Now, I mean, I bought it outright cash, but his point, I'm thinking they're not selling people a car with a price. They're selling monthly payments. So I indulged the guy and I said, I'm not really sure. And he goes, you could pay this, 72 months, 84. I said, wait a second. People actually buy a vehicle and leverage it over 72 and 80. Oh yeah, we do it all the time. Wow. No wonder why we have a poverty issue in this country. So the point I was trying to make is, how do you help people to look at their living expenses? Because it's my opinion, it's probably is the greatest percentage, and there's so much lost opportunity because they're leveraging it with debt. How do you get them to look at that differently and make some real hard choices there?
Yeah. The interesting thing is some people are just stuck in their ways, man. I've got people that have got my coaching program and literally not even made it 2 months with me. And that used to insult me because I would be like, man, how did I fail? Like, why can't these? Because my heart is going, these people are going to be in the same situation in 10 years that they are today when they talk to me, because they didn't take the steps to move forward and to get the help they needed to break the cycle, right? Some people are able to break the cycle on their own. Other people are not, and they need that help. They need that mentoring or that guidance. And people who quit are just going to be in the same boat. They're going to be like, I don't have any money. They're 10 years later, they still don't have any money. It's not going to change. But to get them to latch onto it, I think the thing, from my Dave Ramsey days and from here is, you're either going to be motivated by the pain when the pain of change is less than the pain of staying the same, right? And there's a pain point there. What I find is people change in one of two areas. They either have so much pain they have to do something different. That could be facing marital challenges because of finances. It could be just upside down, just struggling, like your power getting cut off. Like this can't go on like this. Or it could be somebody that's a little bit more optimist, which I think I am, going, hey, I don't want to, like, that's bad, but I need to I believe I can do something better. So they're motivated to look for more prosperity, or, there's something in their environment that changed that makes them believe they can do it. And I think that's the first step. And I think from my experience right now, Jay, is I'm finding that people can latch on to the wealth vision a lot easier in that 20 to 35 age range, or that 20 to 40 age range. I'm having a lot more difficulty with people that are, 40. Oh, when you get over the 40 range into the upper years, people are just having a lot more difficult time of, believing that they can do it. And I think they're just, like you say, it's a psychological rut, kind of say. And they're just, it's just difficult to get out of the rut, because you were started to be groomed to be in that rut. Honestly, I hate to say it, from the day you're born, the system is designed to put you in that rut. And it's hard. It can be hard to get out of that if you don't have some kind of catalyst to break you free, like running across a podcast like mine or yours or Dave Ramsey's, something like that. The bigger challenge is, how do you get more people to get out of that rut, right?
Sure.
On a massive scale, not just the individuals. But I've got this thing I call the 4 money buckets. And I'm like, everybody's in one of the 4 buckets. They're either in the broke bucket, the just getting by bucket, the future millionaire bucket, or the millionaire bucket. You're in, there's only 4. You're in one of those. If you're not going to be a millionaire, you're just going to be, at some point, you're just going to be getting by. I've got some people that I know that are, they should be, living well, retired, but they're living off Social Security, and they're not broke, but they're not future millionaires or millionaires, and they're just getting by. And that's the lifestyle that they've, sadly, are probably going to ride out for the rest of their lives. But it doesn't have to be that way. So, it's a challenge to get people to break free. But I think the pain, it's either very painful or somebody that's extremely optimistic, but there has to be some kind of catalyst that kind of jolts them to life, so they start making different decisions.
So do you think the attack on wealth or wealthy people and, by our political leaders is intentional, again, to create that divide and to make people suspicious who are not? And do you find that also being an obstacle for certain people to get over, because they've been told, as I mentioned, there's an attack on wealth. It used to be 80s and 90s, it used to be really cool to drive an expensive sports car, or have a big house. Now it's looked at as, you're somehow working against society, and you're a consumer, you overconsume, and it's bad, and so on and so forth. So is that an obstacle that you face and see with some people?
Yeah, I think I call it the misbeliefs of wealth. So people that are not wealthy, they're kind of living in a mindset control zone. And so it's like, let's see if I can get these right. The misbeliefs of wealth is, I'll never be rich.
Mm-hmm.
Those rich people got lucky. Those rich people are bad. Money's evil, right? And all of those are false. All of those are lies, right? All of those are lies that are kind of out there, kind of kicking around. I remember the first time I was telling somebody, I was up in my college, not my college, but my son's college, and we were sitting with a couple, and they said, "Hey, what do you do?" And I said, "Oh, I host a podcast, and I've got a book called The Millionaire Choice." And you could see the face change on the guy. And immediately his excuse was, you were just in the right place at the right time. You got lucky.
Right.
And I'm like, BS. I have invested in myself since I was young, and I have worked my butt off with the work ethic that my parents taught me. And I have invested in myself over and over and made different choices. And guess what? These choices are not that hard. Now, you asked a very specific question. Is there war on wealth? I'm going to be real honest with you. My worldview right now, today, this is it. America is the wealthiest country probably in the history of the world. 40% of the world's millionaires live in the United States. Over 10%, might be 12% right now, of American households are millionaire households. There's roughly, I think, 115 or 120 million households. And I think it's around 12 million are millionaire households.
Tony,
think about those numbers.
Is that net worth?
Yeah, net worth, millionaire, $1 million US. Now,
got it.
People will decipher what classifies a millionaire. Sometimes they'll pull out the house of residence, say it's got to be $1 million in assets outside of your house. Don't include your house. I'm like, who cares? Like, don't complicate it. It's $1 million net worth wherever it exists. Your net worth is $1 million. You sell your house. Now, why is that number so significant? Because for the first time in history, you have a system that's in place that actually creates millionaires and creates wealth for the vast majority of the public. It's accessible to everybody. You go to any other country on the planet and you do not have that system in place. That's why everybody's dying to get in here. And Americans don't realize it. I don't care, rich or poor, whatever. I've got people that I've had on my podcast, lovely guy, William Mandrell. His grandmother was a millionaire, Black woman, millionaire, moved from the South up to Boston, made her millions in Boston, right? And she did it in real estate with a 6th grade education, Jay. She had a 6th grade education and became a millionaire through rental properties and property management. And then her son became a drug addict and was not wealthy. He didn't repeat it. So Willie came along and said, hey, I want to live like mom. I'm going to live like grandma, not like dad. I don't want to follow dad's, example. I want to follow grandma's example. And now Willie's a millionaire. So it skipped a generation. But here's the deal. The people that have the real power, the people that are pulling the strings, the what do you call it? The wizard behind the curtain, right? When you have wealthy people, their power is in jeopardy. Their power is in jeopardy. I'll say it again. When you have the wealth that the vast majority of Americans have access to now, the people in real power at the top, their power is in jeopardy. And that's why you see what's going on today, because they are threatened by the freedom that is happening across the U.S. And the U.S. is the beacon, right? So you can go to any other country, but look at what's happening in Australia right now. If you get tested positive for COVID, Jay, in Australia right now, they are pulling people out of their houses and sticking them into COVID concentration camps. It is crazy what's going on down there. And that is one of the free Western countries. So, and this stuff is not conspiracy, like this, just straight up communism, right? Communism existed in Russia. It existed in China. They're bringing in that system, and it's because of the threat. It's the control and the threat. So we have to understand that, and the more people that understand that, the freer the country and the world is going to become. And I do believe that's why you're seeing so much of this craziness that's going on right now. And it's probably going to get a little bit crazier before it gets better. I'm going to hold out belief that it's going to get better until I can't hold out belief anymore. Right. Cause I gotta exude this positive energy. But that's where I think your question goes is the system. There's a system in place where people can build wealth, but there are people in place that don't want that wealth to be created. And if you look at history, Germany is a great example of this. Prior to World War I, Germany was a very wealthy Christian nation. And then World War I, and if you research what happened in World War I with the assassination, and then the country went to war. They did not want to go to war, and the chancellor or the ruler of Germany wanted to end the war in a peaceful way, and that didn't happen. And then what followed that was the Weimar Republic, where you have women who are prostituting themselves to pay for food to feed their families and their kids. So they went from a strong Christian nation with high ideals and morals to this like other type of society which gave birth to Hitler and gave birth to World War II. So all of that stuff, in my opinion, was all orchestrated when you look at the players behind it. And that's the system. And the more people that understand it, the freer we're going to be.
Unfortunately, I think there's so much truth to what you're saying there. So one of the things that we discussed earlier was, where are things going? I consume a lot of information. People that I follow, podcasts that I listen to, widely considered premier experts in the world of finance, and they're all singing the same tune. There is a big correction coming, and it's coming really soon. A, do you buy into that? Number one. And number two, how can people protect themselves? What are you kind of sharing with the people that you work with?
Yeah. So I'll believe two things, because like I said before, I want to be as positive as possible until I can't be positive anymore. But you also have to be a little bit of a realist.
Sure.
And there's a wonderful guy for your listeners that they could read to get a little bit more educated on this, Jim Rickards.
Yes.
He's got two great books. One called The Death of Money, which I read in 2016. He wrote it in 2013, and everything in that book is true and has come to pass. Without going into too many details, go read the book, but it's a good resource. I have not read his book called The Road to Ruin. I do have it. I have not read it, but I did see it on Robert Kiyosaki's desk the other day that I was watching a Robert Kiyosaki video.
So you saw that podcast. I saw that too.
I'm going to go. I've got that book on my bookshelf. I'm going to read it because it's sitting on Robert's desk. So I'm going to go read that. But again, it talks about how to get prepared for where we are and where things are going. I do believe this is what we're going through right now is orchestrated. 100% engineered events are happening right now and have been planned for many, many, many years. You need to understand that. The more you understand it, the better you and your family are going to be prepared for it. Okay. I don't have all the answers because I've never been through this before. I'm trying to figure it out for my family. If you listen to Jim Rickards and those guys, paper money, I'm an opinion that real wealth only exists in three phases. Gold and silver, as Robert Kiyosaki says, that's God's money because God created it. Land and real estate, and then business, right? And if you go back through history, you can see that those three things have always been where real wealth existed because they're very tangible things. If you go back into China, I'm a student of China, like old China, not current China, but old China. And you had families and they had business, like each family was a business corporate, and they had families, the uncles, the aunts, the children were all raised to be business-minded people. And you had a family business collective, and they would have things that they would start or manage and then grow up through that. That's what you see with the Trump family, right? You got Donald Trump, Ivanka Trump, Eric Trump, Don Trump Jr. But you see that at that level, that's what they do. They propagate. That's why they say the rich keep getting richer. Well, it's part of that. It's because they've already made the shift. And I'm making that shift for my family, right? I've got 6 kids. Now I'm going, okay, I broke free from a broke poverty mindset to a wealth mindset. And how do I transfer that to my children? I'm still figuring that out. But let me repeat it: gold and silver, land, and then business, right? Those are the three. So I've converted a lot of my capital, like cash, into gold and silver personally. I've done that. I never owned it before because I worked for Dave Ramsey, and Dave Ramsey is kind of like an anti-gold, anti-silver guy. And typically he would be right. In the stock market, you would make more wealth than in gold and silver, but that's not the purpose of gold and silver. The purpose of gold and silver is to protect your wealth. So now the paper system, which I call the fake system, right? So the stock market, it's paper wealth. It's stocks and bonds. It can burn up. So like General Motors went bankrupt. What happened to General Motors stockholders? Well, the government wiped out the stockholders. The debtors got paid, which was bankers and wherever the loans were for the properties and equipment. And then the government took over the stocks, but all the shareholders got nothing. So they lost everything, even though they were in the stock market. That's supposed to be safe, right? Enron, Sprint, MCI, WorldCom, these companies. Those companies are not like, it's not like super common, but it does happen. And then you have dollars, US dollars, which I was just thinking the other day, like I used to buy, somebody said you used to be able to buy a hamburger at Burger King for like 25 cents. Now it's like $2.50 or $3. If you go to Five Guys, you're paying $5 or $6 for a hamburger, which used to cost like a quarter or 50 cents. So without getting into economics, paper money burns. So if you think of it that way, paper wealth burns up. It can burn away just like goes away. And the same thing can happen in the stock market. So what I like to think about is the stock market can be used to build wealth, but you really should be thinking of how to transfer that wealth out of the paper system into the three tangible systems, which is gold, silver, land, and business. And Robert Kiyosaki right now, cryptocurrency, I'm a cryptocurrency investor. Robert Kiyosaki says he only invests in three different things: gold, Bitcoin, and real estate. That's it. That's all. He doesn't have any stocks. Like, those are the three that he says he invests in. And I don't think those are bad ideas. I don't know if you want to talk about crypto today on the show.
I'd love to. Yeah, because a
yeah.
lot of our listeners, ask me questions because they know I'm also a very big fan. I've been investing since 2016. I've been following the work you probably know, Tika Tawari. And he's a guy I followed. There's a few other as well too, but so talk about, because you mentioned before about decentralized finance, and I keep wondering, how's the central bankers going to get a hold of this and control this, because the fact that they don't have control is a threat. So at some point they're going to want to see what they can do to, to manipulate in some way or shape or form. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Please talk about it.
Yeah. So, I'll go, try not to go too far in depth. Feel free to break in on me whenever I go too long here. I am a cryptocurrency investor. I got started late. I should have got started in 2010 when we had some people at Ramsey's company pushing it, but I was on a different bandwagon at that point. Right. So I waited until 2017 to get into cryptocurrency, and I do believe in it, and buying it. But here's what I think about crypto. Okay. So for the last 100 years, the stock market has been existing and people have been playing in the stock market. Okay. That's the financial system that was set up by the people that have the power. And when you look at the way the stock system works, it really is more of the same. It's, you put a little in, like when you look at the assets that are in there, all of that cash doesn't exist. It doesn't really exist in the stock market, right? It just, everybody keeps buying it up, and it drives the price up. But eventually it doesn't exist. So when everybody wants to get their money out, it's just going to go back to zero. It's going to go straight back down to zero. You don't really have a 35,000 point Dow Jones. It's only existing at that state at that moment in time. When people start pulling their money out, it's just going to keep plummeting and dropping unless they freeze it, like Ice 9 protocol it, like Jim Rickards is saying they're going to do. Crypto is very much the same way. It's the same system when you look at it. It's built up over time on price because people keep pumping it with dollars. So when you look at the primary stock market, you've got the 401k model that came in. What did that do? Well, now all of a sudden people are pouring money into the stock market through their 401k. So they're working for money, trading their money into a paper system, another paper system. So when I look at the system, Jay, and this is my best thinking at the moment, I think this is stuff that God may be revealing to me. Long term, I'm new in this game. I never planned on being in it. I just felt like God was leading me into it. It's this: yours and my time. The system converts it into modes of currency, right? So a commodity, right? So at the core, when you look at the system, the whole system is designed to take yours and my time, our lives, if you want to say that. So the average person's going to work between 100,000 and 150,000 hours in their lifetime. And we convert that time into currency. And all of these systems are designed to collect that currency. The stock market was designed to collect that currency. The tax system was designed to collect that currency. And guess what? Cryptocurrency is designed to collect that currency. It's just the next system. So while everybody's on this bandwagon of, oh, cryptocurrency decentralizes money, it's taking power away from central bankers, I don't believe that. Here's what I believe. When you have, I don't even know, 100 plus different currencies in the world, when you go to every country, right? The Russian ruble, the Chinese yuan, the Japanese yen, the Mexican peso, all these countries have different money. But cryptocurrency converts every single currency into a 1 and a 0. So when you look at people going, it decentralizes, well, what it's really doing is centralizing every currency in the world into a 1 or a 0. Now, the question is like, well, how do they control that? And I don't have the answer directly. I have this as just theory, but my mind goes to AI, that it's an AI controlled, that cryptocurrency in the end game will be an AI controlled system. And the reason I say that is because if you go to your phone, and you know as well as I do, we're being monitored all the time through our cell phones. I was talking to a guy today about to send him a contact for somebody on my phone. And as soon as I went to text it, his name popped up as the next selection on my text. So they already knew that I was about to text this guy this contact information, and they put the guy's name right in front of me where all I had to do is hit a button. The only way they knew that is because I was having a conversation right there at that moment in that room. So when you think about the AI that's developed already and you think about crypto, the timing is just too coincidental for me. I don't know if you've seen the magazine cover from the Economist magazine. I think it's like 1988, but it's got a picture of a phoenix on it. And at the feet of the phoenix is all the currencies of the world, and they're all on fire. And then it's got a gold chain around its neck with a coin on it. And I tell you, it looks an awful lot like a Bitcoin. It looks like a cryptocurrency, but go look it up. You just have to search Economist magazine, 1988, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. That's 40 years or 30 years ago, almost exactly 30 years ago. And here we are sitting in the moment of a financial meltdown with cryptocurrency becoming the new thing that everybody's talking about. It's too coincidental for me. Now, does that mean you run from it or you're fearful of it? I think you just have to understand the system to be able to operate and play within the system, because we've been living in a control system for over 100 years. This is just the next version of that same control system, but it's going to have more control. So how are you going to operate within that system? And the first step is you got to understand it better. And so cryptocurrency, just like the old system, just play with it and use it. And, when it comes time to, not use it, then, be in something else, own some land, own some gold and silver, own some, have options for your family. That's where my head's at. And just being honest, I've got a pretty substantial, I'm not a crypto millionaire yet. If I'd held on to everything I bought in 2017, I would be, but I had to liquidate some of it to pay some bills. And I kept my real estate and sold my crypto. I wish I would have sold my real estate, kept my crypto.
That's funny. I know a few guys have done something very similar, or they took their crypto and they bought real estate.
That's not bad either. That's not bad either. I just needed to put a little bit more in and take a little bit less out. So that's what I needed, but I'm on the track now.
So I had seen where Kiyosaki had said that Bitcoin is really more of an asset like gold and silver now than it is truly a currency. Had you heard him say that?
Yeah, I've heard him say that. And the reason they say that is because it is slow. And it's, the cryptocurrency, the network it was on was, it would take like 45 minutes to do a transaction. So when you think about gold, like you got to drive down to the place to exchange the gold. And it's going to take time. You got to drive, you got to find somebody to give you cash, you got to set up an appointment, like to transfer gold into cash. That's what it takes. Bitcoin was kind of like that. I put through some transactions, takes 45 minutes. Now, what's most recently happening is them rolling out the Lightning Network, because they do intend to be like the one and all. Like that's kind of where I think they're going, where it is the currency. And I saw a couple of guys yesterday, I forget their names, Raul, I forget his last name. And they were talking about Ethereum because one of them was pushing the altcoin mindset, which I buy into altcoins. And I, just like you build a typical portfolio, you branch out, you don't want to stick all your eggs in one basket. But the other guy is 100% Bitcoin. Like I think they said he had 117,000 Bitcoins. Cool. So I think he's a Bitcoin billionaire, one of the Bitcoin billionaires, but that's all he buys. He's like, rest of it's junk, Bitcoin only. And I think that's risky too.
Sure.
But the idea is, you buy a lot of different stuff, man. And that's the thing with the wealth model that I talked about earlier. You just need to be putting your money into wealth, things that create long-term value, right? Sure. Right now, Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are the hot thing. You're not supposed to give financial advice, but I can tell you that some of the people I talk to, they're like, all of my investment dollars for the rest of this year are going into crypto, and that started 4 or 5 months ago. And it's like, you can get, and as well as I do, I mean, you run the numbers. If you're in a mutual fund, S&P mutual fund for the last 21 years, you got like 371%. you know what you get? You can get, I could name 6 cryptos right now. Well, I can't name them, but I could go find them for you because I've looked at them, that would have turned $10,000 into $1 million in the last 6 to 12 months.
I know it's just crazy. I know it. I know exactly what you're talking about. I mean, I'm familiar with them.
Take the risk. Take the risk. It's really not that big. You know, a lot of people are afraid to lose $1,000. And was it you're stepping over? What they say? You're stepping over dollars to pick up dimes.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, take some risk, man. It's not the end of the world. You know, if you're a 36-year-old, 40-something-year-old, and you risk $1,000 in a cryptocurrency, it's not the end of the world if it doesn't work out. Like, it's just like, oh, it's just a small bad decision. Don't be afraid to make some bad decisions. You learn from them.
I've always mentioned to my listeners that personally, when I first started with it, I took money, a small percent of high risk capital, putting it into a high risk asset. When I first, started in 2016, 5-10%, whatever it might be. I suggest that you do, as personally speaking, I suggest you do more. But if it's money that you can afford to lose, the return exponentially way out risks, in my opinion, the risk. And so I would agree with you. And I'm really glad that you shared that information with my listeners, because it's a topic that comes up all the time. And I've even really encouraged my kids to get involved, and to some level they have, but not nearly as much. And so I'm going to make sure they listen to this episode, Tony.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's funny that you say that, because when I was, last year during COVID, it was when I'm like, you know what? My kids need to have a bigger vision than just be a debt-free and frugal, which is what they've got that down. My kids don't go blow money. They don't spend money ridiculously, but they don't invest yet. And I'm like, I need to teach them how to invest. And so I started talking to them about investment. So, and I've talked to them about cryptocurrency, but my 10-year-old seems to be the one that has showed the most excitement about it. But I've got one of my sons, he's 18. He's coming home from college on Thursday. I'm probably going to give him $1,000 in cryptocurrency and let him go figure it out. Because I tell you why I'm doing that too, is I talked to some other investment friends of mine here in town, and they have met these 18-year-old kids, 18, 20-year-old kids who come from, slightly wealthier families, but their parents gave them $10,000 when they were like ages 13, 14, 15, 16, and said, hey, go figure out how to invest this money. And some of those kids now are millionaires at age 18.
Love it. Love that.
Just empowerment, man. You never know where that's going to go. You just got to, that's why I say you just got to get moving in the right direction. You don't have to have all the answers. You just have to be willing to take that first step and get going.
Well, and then too, right? Every day, one of the missions of the show this year has really been about empowering people with increasing their financial IQ. Again, referencing Richard Kiyosaki, he talks about the greatest currency. Every day you should be spending time to expand your financial IQ. Again, whether it's listening to shows like this, reading blogs, whatever, do something, because I mean, the impact is almost incalculable. As your financial IQ grows, your ability to understand investment tools and products, what is, risk versus benefit for each, understanding your own goals and visions, putting strategies in place, finding mentors who are doing it. Man, I say this all the time. The real joy of being financially free is that I have a freedom of time and choice. I can do what I want, when I want, with whoever I want, whenever I want. That's my definition of financial freedom. It's the things that I learned along the way that gave me the tools to make that happen. And now I have in a sense, a broader sense of freedom than ever before. That's what I love. It's not even so much the financial freedom, it's what it affords me in life to do. So before we wrap up, and this has been a lot of fun, I really enjoyed it and very appreciative you came on, Tony. Talk about gold and silver. Are you someone who buys physical bullion and coins? Do you hold it? Do you keep it in separate vaults? Do you buy ETFs? Just your perspective, not that you're giving advice to other people of what they should do.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple things I would be very aware of right now is the banking system and the way it works, right? So when people go, where do you store your gold and silver once you buy it? You got to understand that if you put an asset in the bank right now, if that bank goes belly up, those assets are considered that bank. So if you have cash in that bank and the bank goes bankrupt, like the Great Depression, your money's gone. Like it's theirs. They confiscate it. And then you have to go to the FDIC to get your money back, right? How long is that going to take, right? So like right now I've got quite a bit of cash in the bank, but I'm, pulling it out because I'm like, it's safer at home than it is in the bank right now. And so you got to understand that. So like if you stick money in a safety deposit box, well, technically that's in the safety deposit box at the bank. You can't get access to it 24/7. If something goes down during a Great Depression type of event, well, doors are locked. That bank might get gobbled up by another bank and nobody's there to open the doors. You can't go get your stuff. Okay. So you have to understand that. I think it's a big principle. You also have to understand that the financial person, I forget their name, that Joe Biden has started bringing in, is pushing very socialist type concepts. Whether you're political or not, listening to the show, don't listen to that. Don't listen to that piece. You have to listen to the approach that they're taking. And she has said, I think there only needs to be one bank. That's a central bank.
Yes.
No other banks. Think about that. No regions, no Fifth Third, nothing. Just one bank. And that's one bank to rule them all. That's what you have to understand where that's going and headed. Now, ETFs, why do we have ETFs or paper silver? That product was created to control the price of silver and gold. That's my personal opinion. The stock market or the price on gold and silver is manipulated. So yes, the whole system is played. So when you think about paper that you're buying is kind of like contracts to get gold and silver. It doesn't even exist yet. It's still in the ground. So you're buying some paper, again, back to what I said before, paper burns, right? That if you understand the principle of why the ETFs exist on that, it's to manipulate that price point, because the gold and silver don't actually exist. If you took all the contracts, lined them all up, it would be years before that gold and silver actually existed in the physical world. So I'm a big proponent of buying like hard silver and gold and then storing it because it's a real asset. Just like you have land, it's tangible, you own it. Gold and silver you actually own. And then you got to figure out where you store it. Obviously, if you have a little bit, it's a little easier to store than if you have a lot. And so you have to look at different things. Some states, like Texas, I believe Texas has their gold repository in place now, which is not a bank. It's a gold repository. Legislature exists in Tennessee to set one up, but it does not exist yet. Utah has set up a repository. I don't know if it exists yet, but I know they've done the legal work to put it in place. So you see quite a few different states that are creating gold repositories. So right now, I believe one of the few and the primary gold repository is in New York on Wall Street. And so that's where like all the gold is kind of like kept. We say Fort Knox, but you talk to some people, conspiracy theorists, does gold actually exist in Fort Knox or not? I don't know. According to James Bond, they tried to, dissolve all the gold, but Goldfinger. But, those are things to think about. So I'm a big proponent of physical gold and silver. And I just started buying gold and silver like 3 years ago. Like that was my first purchases. And I do believe that it is a part of a financial plan, especially when a currency melts down. And that's the thing people don't understand, because we haven't seen a currency meltdown before in the United States, but the average currency, paper currency, called fiat currency, called fake money, happens about every 75 years. So on average, 75 years is the lifespan of a currency. Our currency, the US dollar, has gone on for hundreds of years now, effectively. Okay. Now you had some, stops in there like the Southern dollar, the Confederate dollars, those obviously didn't make it, but the federal dollar has been around, and now you're witnessing some massive inflation. And once hyperinflation hits, that money ends up becoming worthless. And there are a lot of videos on YouTube about other currencies that people show, like they collect them, right? They collect default currencies from other countries. There's some I've seen like $10 million bills from, and they're not dollars, they're some other, currency. And, but that's probably where we're headed with the US dollar, because the US dollar has to go away for the new global financial system to come into place. And what form that exists in, I'm not real sure. Jim Rickard says it's going to be some kind of called the SDR, special drawing rights, or Euro stuff. You can read Jim's stuff. He's much smarter about this than I am, but yeah, that's your answer for gold and silver. And buy it locally if you can.
Yes.
You look at the biggest thing is look at the state you're buying it in, because you can get gold shipped, like Texas Precious Metals. Texas does not have a sales tax on gold and silver. I believe Georgia doesn't have a sales tax on gold and silver. Tennessee does have a sales tax on gold and silver. So you want to buy from a state that doesn't have a sales tax on, that commodity, and then they insure it. The guys will ship it to you, and they'll insure it when they ship it to you, depending on what you buy. And I buy 1 ounce rounds on everything. I haven't bought any bars yet. I'm waiting for the day when I can buy the 10-kilo gold bar, but I'm not there yet.
Man, all great advice. There's actually a local jeweler that sells silver dollars. You can exchange either jewelry or just go purchase it here. We have in our own community, so that's interesting. You brought up the fact that we are in this early stage or maybe mid stage of hyperinflation. And I had a conversation at an event I was over this past weekend, and talking to some friends and colleagues, and the things that I was sharing, I could just look at their face. They're like, "Oh my God, I had no idea." And so getting people like you, experts who understand, or at least kind of see where the ball's moving, I think you would agree, I don't think you can predict when it's going to happen, but we're moving towards that. You know what I mean? And so therefore, we can't predict when the events are going to be and when your dollars are going to be worth nothing, but we're moving there. So
Yeah.
get prepared is what you're saying. Tony, that's what you're saying is get prepared.
Yeah. And let me add one more thing. I should have said this earlier, but let me add this other concept, Jay, because I think this will be helpful for you when you talk to your listeners or whoever you're coaching. And that's this, we talk about an emergency fund.
Yes.
And the old emergency fund, I call it the old emergency fund now, really exists in the format of being taught and practiced as, you have cash in the bank and you have a money market account. And I call that the old emergency fund because it's not keeping up with inflation. You're losing possibly 10, 20% a year here coming up is what it is. So if you have, 10 grand, it's going to be worth like 8 grand next year. And here in Tennessee, if you're trying to buy a house, good luck. A $400,000 house this year is going to be $500,000 next year. That's how fast things are moving in this area. So what I'm teaching now is a 3-fold plan for an emergency fund, which is some cash, figure out what you need to be safe, gold and silver, because it's a currency. It can be converted into cash if you need it. And then cryptocurrency, right? And when you look at that, gold and silver will go up in value. Cash will go down in value, but your cryptocurrency may actually make you some money.
Right.
When I looked at Bitcoin just late last year, what was the price on it? About 6,500 last year. Did it get down to 3,600? I'm trying to remember where it was at, but
you're talking Bitcoin?
Yeah, Bitcoin alone. Yeah, just last year.
Yes.
And now we're sitting on 60,000. So you're looking at 1,000% growth, roughly, ballpark, depending on the day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Versus inflation just taking the win. So where would you rather your money be sitting going into the future, like into the next 12 months, right? And so that's what I'm teaching now is just reevaluate where your cash is at, because if you've got it all sitting in the bank, it's at risk. So look at diversify, because all 3 of those are convertible into cash if you need it, but only 1 or 2 of those are going up in value. And there are people, traditionally, gold and silver has not been a great long-term investment. It's more of a stable, but I believe those days are going to change, because I believe that gold price, that silver price has been repressed. And, Jim Rickards is predicting that gold price is going to hit 15 grand and maybe even $30,000 in the future. Some other silver guys are talking about, $100 per ounce of silver. I heard one guy the other day saying he thinks it's going into the high 3 figures in the future, but he's probably a little bit too much of an optimist.
Sure.
But just understand those things. Don't just let your cash sit in a bank account. Look at different opportunities.
So it was always, the rule of thumb was have 6 months, for your emergency fund. Do you still recommend that?
I would look at 6 to 12, but I would just break it down in those 3 categories instead of all leaving it in the bank. Just go, hey, my gold and silver is convertible to cash. It's still currency.
Right.
It's just, so maybe I would do 3 months in cash and, 2 months in gold and silver, or in 1 month in crypto, or, whatever you're comfortable with. Right. So maybe it's 1 month in gold and silver and 2 months in crypto.
Right.
It's whatever you're most comfortable with. And if you're not used to cryptocurrencies, making that first crypto investment can be a little bit of a stretch, but just do the first one. I guarantee you, once you make the first one, your mind will, it's amazing what will happen once you take that first step, the shifts that happen in your mind.
Man, we can go on forever. I got like 7 questions in my head, but I got to ask you 2 as we wrap up here. Where can people learn about basic Bitcoin purchasing, investing, some simple ways that they can learn? What do you recommend? Any resources?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously you can watch anything on YouTube. You might have to fish through a few videos. I actually wrote a couple of articles on the Millionaire Choice blog. One of those articles is about just the market. Like, a lot of people are going, is this cryptocurrency thing real? Is it here to stay? And I explain what my thoughts are on that in a very simple terms. And I also talk about how to get started making your first current cryptocurrency investments, and just walk people through step by step. Go here, do this, go here, do this. Yeah. And so it's just at the millionairechoice.com. I won't say that mine are the best materials out there, but they are some materials that are easy to understand just because they're helping the people that I work with.
Well, just listening to you today, I think people are going to use that. So that's a great way to find you and to connect with you if they want more information about what you do and learn from you. You said the Millionaire's Choice. What other mediums in which they can connect with you?
Yeah, the best place is themillionairechoice.com. I've got free ebooks there if you want those. My whole thing is I want to get this material in as many people's hands as possible. So I'm really trying not to try to monetize every piece that I make. I have tonybradshaw.com. Which is my personal blog. It's detached from the business side of things. But the primary place is over on themillionairechoice.com. Of course, Facebook, all that other stuff. But I do most of my work and spend most of my time on themillionairechoice.com.
Fantastic. So as we wrap up today, what's the last lasting message you want to leave with Triple P Nation?
Yeah. If you want to be good with money, you got to take time to learn and study money. Like, it's that simple. And you need to develop a purpose for your wealth. Like, wealth is not a sin. Wealth is not dirty. Like, if more good people had money, we would have less problems in the world. The problem is that some bad people have too much money. And that's why we're dealing with a lot of these social issues and problems that we have to face. So I really like to believe that we can create more wealth for people who really care about other people. That's where I'm headed. Fantastic.
Tony, thank you so much for joining me today. That's the millionairechoice.com. Check them out. Incredible amount of useful, practical information from the mindset, from strategies, from looking ahead to where things are going. I can't thank you enough. And perhaps we'll have you back on again. Again, like I said, I've got so many other questions that we could have made this a 2.5-hour podcast, but I want to respect your time.
Hey, thanks, Jay. I really appreciate it.
So Triple P Nation, as I always say, you be you. Just be the best you, and you will always empower your dreams, ignite your passion, and accelerate prosperity. Until next time, guys, have an absolutely great week.